Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to the Federalist Academy. This is our 8th session out of 11. And today we're going to talk about regional integration outside of Europe and whether it follows the Federalist model. We are joined by Fernando Iglesias, who is president of the World Federalist Movement Institute for Global Policy. He is also Altiero Spinelli Chair at the Italian University Institute in Argentina and a politician national deputy in Argentina. So he has a very broad background for talking about this topic, especially because his research has been focusing on regional integration. And there's also the practical experience, of course, for campaigning for regional integration within Latin America. So this promises to be a very interesting session, both with practical and academic insights. Before we get started, I'm just going to make a brief update on the logistical side. So as you may have seen, the Federalist Academy in-person seminar is organized in Prague in November, and the call for participants is open. Actually, today evening is the last day to sign up for the seminar. So if you haven't done so yet, please do go on there. All of those who have signed up on the email list have received an email on it. And it's also been advertised on the JEF websites and on JEF Europe social media. So today is the last day to sign up. And yeah, then we're going to start selecting the participants. So do not hesitate. We're really looking forward to seeing you in Prague. But now, without any further ado, I'm going to go back to our speaker for today. So Fernando Iglesias, thank you once again for accepting the invitation to come and speak for us. And the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. How many minutes do we have, and how much for the initial presentation and then the interchanges?
Usually we have had around 1 hour and a half, which also includes the interchanges and the discussion. So yeah, maybe like an hour or so for the presentation, and then we can see questions from the participants. So that's been the
how much?
Usually the speaker has been around an hour, but it's also flexible. So yeah, there's quite a bit of time, but we can also do exchanges with the participants whenever.
Perfect. Okay. Well, let's see. There are so many arguments here, so I'm going to be a little telegraphic for my generation, Twitter for yours, but I should start by the state of affairs of regional integration here. As the director of the only Altiero Spinelli Cathedral all over the world, I have to say I'm very disappointed about what's going on. So most of the process of regional integration are blocked or going backward, and maybe the most important initiative, meaning Mercosur, is also in a complete crisis. And I wish to analyze this in a view which is not only directed to Latin Americans, but most for Europeans, for the JEFers, and in order to try to have a fruitful discussion about the general process of regional integration all over the world. I'm the president of the World Federalist Movement, and the WEF and the JEF are a very important part, the most important part of our movement. And I think we have to work closely in order, if we want to move the political situation, the international political situation, to a better situation. So the reason of the failure of the Latin American regional integrations are many, and I'm going just to mention the traditional ones that were raised many times. I don't want to fix too much in that, but I want to mention the first one in a very strong difference with Europe is about war. We didn't have war, and regional integration, unfortunately, in the only continent in which was developed in a very fruitful way, meaning Europe. That was about big crisis. There is a phrase about that Europe moves forward to the future through the crisis. And the big crisis of the 20th century was the war. So the idea of United Europe, United States of Europe is from the 19th century, you know, Victor Hugo, etc., etc. But only after a big crisis like the war, that was possible. We here didn't have a war, fortunately, and the propulsion for the regional integration is not so strong because there is not such a terrible experience about the consequence of nationalism. The second is nationalism. Latin America is a very, very nationalist continent. So nationalism as an ideology is very strong, and even in my country, for instance, the parties which claim to be liberal, they are in the field of international affairs very close to nationalism, to nationalistic positions, to the realpolitik as a school of international affairs. And this is a very, very strong limitation to the possibilities of imposing federalism and regional integration. There are other reasons. One is that Brazil is too big. You know, Brazil is a half of South America in population, in GDP, in territory is half of. So you imagine in Europe, one of the conditions, one of the problems of integration was that Germany was too big. But Germany has another country of more or less the same dimension, France, and Italy was not so far away from that. So imagine if you had a single country which is half of the South America, half of South America, and it's more than half of the Mercosur. You know, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. Paraguay and Uruguay are dwarfed, and Argentina is a fifth part in economy than respect to Brazil. So this is a structural condition which is very difficult when you are going to, you know, to organize the Parliament of Mercosur. What are you going to follow the Federalist logic, one country, one vote, or the democratic logic, one man, one vote? The combination is difficult even for Europe. Imagine for the Mercosur, in which the population of Brazil is far away more important than the other countries together. This is another reason. Another reason is Latin American, help me with my bad English, but it's inconclusiveness or something like that. So our countries were born on the sign of the regional integration. San Martin and Bolivar were in favor of the Patria Grande, you know, something, an idea in which the countries were together for something more important, some idea very close to the idea of the United States of Europe. But we had now about 10 countries in South America, another 10 in Central America, and so on. In North America, they don't speak so much about regional integration. They don't make big discourses, speeches about integration and cooperation, but they have only 2 countries. They are, in this way, very more concrete about the needs of. And this is a big difference, you know. You have in North America, one of the reasons, of the many reasons for which North America was very more developed than South America, in my opinion, is this. You have in North America 2 countries, and both have Atlantic and Pacific coast. We don't have a single country which a real access to both oceans, which is a shame. We are starting now to think about the infrastructure in order to cross the Andes, in order to connect the two oceans, which is ridiculous. This is the 21st century, you know. So in conclusion, this is another reason. Ideologization is another one. There is a very a part of the left here in South America which kind to be left, but this is a very nationalistic and populistic left. I don't want to enter the polemic about that, but the consequences of this idea of I don't know, Chavez, and in some way also Lula and the Kirchner and so on regional integration was a stop of the process, because when you put the regional integration process into an ideologic form, this is the way in which, and you put this in a nationalistic way. So you imagine that regional integration is not a bridge towards the world, but it's a defense, it's a wall to defend the countries from the influence of the rest of the world, which is the basic idea of this ideology about regional integration. You create a situation in which regional integration is not possible anymore, because you are changing the governments, you change Brazil or Argentina from the right to the left, and if you say this is the project of a single part being the left of the right, so Europe was very successful because you had on board social democrats, liberals, social Christians. Everybody was in favor, and the regional integration was not ideology. We had this problem. Now, when you speak here about regional integration, it sounds very leftist, and you have many resistances, and the process, as soon as governments change their ideological position, the situation changes again, and we are always starting from zero. Another local reason for the failure is we had too many initiatives. We had the Mercosur, but we had the Comunidad Andina de Naciones, and we had the Alianza del Pacífico, and we had the Parlamento Centroamericano, el Parlamento Latinoamericano, and so many things. If you look at Europe, you find also different initiatives, not the same. The Council of Europe, the European Union, the Schengen space, and the Euro space are not the same, and they don't coincide with the European Union. So, and then you have the EFTA, the nations which are close. So also in Europe you have different initiatives, but there is a big difference. In Europe, every initiative has a reason. So if you want to know what is about the unity of the currency, this is the euro area, that's it. And about the free circulation of people, Schengen, okay. And the European Union is this, and this is the Council of Europe, and it is very clear the functions. Here we had, I used to say that Europeans have many show boxes, but they know which shoe goes into each box. We have all the shoes in all the boxes. So you have economic integration and free circulation in Mercosur, in Comunidad, and Latin America, everything in every box. And this is a mess. Basically, you can't work in a rational way this way, and you obtain this. Big speeches about integration, many sympathetic people, many of the Latin American politicians, if they go to Europe, you are going to applaud because they have but in concrete, we have almost nothing in terms of real integration. These are the historical and traditional reasons of our failure. But I wish to introduce another element, which is the the basic one, the most important one. And I think I'm going, if you agree, I'm going to share the screen in order to show some elements. This is something I prepared for the University of Bologna, but it's Italian, but I can try to explain this in English. Let me see, share screen. Let me, if I'm able to. This
yes,
one.
There should be a share screen button at the bottom of the screen.
Let me see. 1 minute. This is my screen. Okay. Can you take my screen? Are you able to do so?
I don't think I can take control of a screen, but yeah, basically for co-hosts, it's at the bottom and in the middle, there's the green button that says share screen. But alternatively, if there's a particular file to share, like it can maybe be sent, and then I can also get it from here.
Can you see? Okay. Here we are.
Yes.
See. No.
It may be that you still have to select the window. Okay, yes, perfect.
That's okay, perfect. So this is my basic analysis. We human beings, we have crossed through 4 big stages in the organization of our societies. The first one, we were gated hunters, fishers. Then we became agricultural societies. And then we entered into an industrial age. My point is that the industrial age is over, that's very clear, and we are entered some kind, which many people say post-industrial, but I used to call that the global society of information and knowledge. And my point is that each of these ages have a strong relationship with the political organization, and that if we are going just to fix in the last 2 ages, which is our basic interest, when you started the industrial age, you didn't have the national state was not the most important way of organizing political affairs. You had empires, you had many other city-states, etc., etc. It was the first industrial revolution that created the necessity of big national states, and then you needed to have a railroad, a common currency, a common market, etc., etc. All this was the base of the creation of national states, and the ideology nationalism was only the political and ideological legitimation of a very concrete economic and technological necessity. And the real problem is that when the industrial revolution changed from steam to electricity, diesel, to the second or third revolution, this is very difficult to fix limits. But when we arrived from the initial industrialism to the late industrialism, national states were too small, particularly in Europe. That was not a problem for the United States of America. That was not a problem from Soviet Russia, etc. But it was a big problem for Europe because the industrial revolution, the late industrial revolution, was very, very strong. Open, attention. Europe was the most developed continent in technology and economy, and it was also the continent in which national states were the smallest ones. So the basic reason of the two world wars starting both in Europe are directly connected with the necessity of a common market, a common currency at the regional level, Europe. And if you look at this without the eyes of humanity, Nazism was an attempt of create some regional market under the control of Germany. So the basic option that Europe had to follow at the beginning of the 20th century was the union through imperialism and war, through Nazism, or defeated the Nazis, the creation of a united Europe through democracy, human rights, etc., etc. But the basic thing is that regional integration is the product of late industrialism. And this is crucial because late industrialism is also important, it's a very important part, but it's not the basic part of the real economy right now. Now, we are not producing basically objects, industrial objects, cars and telephones or fridges or whatever. We are basically producing information. I used to call this Kitsy factors. When you look also at a phone, an iPhone, so when the iPhone exits the factory, it's 10% of the value in which you buy an iPhone in an Apple store. And all the rest is immaterial, is digital, is knowledge, is information, diversity, cultural diversity, communication, innovation, subjectivity. It's the Apple store, it's the network, it's the publicity and the communication. All these immaterial elements, the Kitsy factors, are the base of wealth now. And all this is immaterial. And if you are producing something directly connected with this, an app, social media, a social network like Facebook, whatever, your market is not anymore national, it's not anymore regional, it's global. And this is a big problem because there is a tension for a nation. Why should pay the cost of regional integration if our market is global? This contradiction, we are entering directly into this contradiction. And this is the base of many of the phenomena we are facing right now. The Brexit, for instance. England is very connected with the financial market. So the temptations of leaving regional integration, the start of looking at regional integration, not just like an advantage, but also of a weight, it's very strong. I don't agree, of course, I'm against the Brexit, but we need an explanation why the Brexit is happening, and there are so many, because we are having the same here. We are having exactly the same with Uruguay. Uruguay, a small country, has a small commerce with the rest of the Mercosur, and they wanted to make an agreement with China. And all the other members say, you cannot do this because you are part of the Mercosur. It has to be a general agreement. But the negotiation was over and over for years. And at the end, Uruguay say, okay, I'm going to sign the agreement with China. If you want to expel me from the Mercosur, it's okay. The cost is clearly less important than the benefits of having an agreement with China. You can agree or you can disagree. But the real problem, and this is something you Europeans have to think about, it's that we are changing from the late industrialism, which was the base, the natural way of managing late industrialism was a big unity, continental dimensions, and this was national in the United States of North America, but it was regional in Europe, the European Union. But this age is not completely over, but it's declining in favor of a new economy. And if you fix, it's very simple. You just put the 10 more important enterprises when the European Community of Carbon and Steel was created, and when the European Union was created, and put now which are the 10 biggest enterprises. And you are going to find now, you know, the Facebook, I don't know, Amazon, and Apple, and Google, and so on. So you are going to find these things. Those who are richest are those who are able to create information, knowledge, subjectivity, innovation, communication, and cultural diversity. No matter if you produce an object, an industrial object, or food, or if you produce food, you have genetic modified organisms and new techniques. All this is information and communication and science. This is a big change, and we have to be prepared for this change. That's why I think, and this will be the last point of my speech. There is no future for Europe if Europe doesn't understand that Europe needs the world, the integration to the world, and a better international scenario. And this is crucial for Europe. These are absolutely crucial. Thinking about an independent united European Union, democratic, of human rights and whatever, and federalist and everything, and perfect inside, without considering the international situation, without considering the changes in the economic structure, is illusory. As illusory as it was thinking about, I don't know, a democratic Italy in the middle of the Second World War. This was the basic idea of Spinelli. If we want a democratic Italy, we need first, not after, regional integration. And we are facing a situation in which is exactly the same for Europe. But I'm going to enter this argument at the end. Let me go through. So, why the European Union was successful and the Mercosur was unsuccessful? Well, because as a product of late industrialism, Europe had all the elements for which the economic structure was in favor of the building of the European Union. So there was enough population, enough technological development, big factories, and possibly, trains and connections, communication. So everything was ready for the economic integration of Europe, except the political structure, which was based in nationalism. As soon as Europe changed from nationalism to federalism, and as soon as the process started, the economic forces were always in favor, a part of the economic forces, but the most technologically developed forces and the vanguard of the economy was in favor. And this was the history of the success of Europe, was a combination between the functionalist strategy based on economy and the federalist strategy based on politics. This tension, this permanent tension, was crucial in order to develop Europe as a unity. But the propulsion, the economic propulsion, was very important because it was very clear that for these enterprises based on late industrial, say, basically automation and cars, etc., the development of a united market, a united currency was very, very, very important. This is not the case for South America. South America is still a desert, and the technological development is weak, and big factories are not so much, and the distances are enormous. So from Buenos Aires to the extreme of my country, 3,000 kilometers, you know, so it's big coast, etc., etc. So the impulse towards regional integration was not successful in the Mercosur. It was successful for a while at the beginning in the 90s, but now it's clearly declining. The proportion of the conversion among the different members of the Mercosur is declining every year, and this is a reason for. Let me escape from here. This is a reason for thinking in another kind of initiatives, and I'm going to close with this for the region and a little comment about Europe. So I am the president of the Mercosur Commission at the Argentine Chamber, and I visit three matters, three topics to discuss during this year, and we're doing so. Even if the Commission has no resolutive powers, we cannot legislate, but we can debate and put this in the political agenda. I visit three ones. The first one is the creation of a Latin American criminal court against transnational crime. The second one is the agreement between European Union and the Mercosur. And the third one is a common currency between Argentina and Brazil. We are discussing these 3 points. I think these are the initiatives that could give a federalist approach to the regional integration. Briefly, Latin American Criminal Code. When the process in Europe started, the first thing was to fix the basic problem that Europe had, which was war. Europe had educated population, technological development, etc. They had all, but the problem of Europe was war. And the European Community of Carbon and Steel was not a functionalist strategy. When they created that, Monet and Schuman, etc., they were not thinking about how are we going to develop the industry of carbon and steel in Europe. They were thinking about how to avoid another war. That's why they put the control of carbon and steel, which are the base of armies, in both hands of France and Germany and all the rest of the community. So this is basic. Which is the basic problem of Europe? Which was the basic problem of Europe? War. The strategy has to be, let's fix this first. And the same is here. The basic problem of Latin America is transnational crime. We have, think about this, around 100,000 citizens in Europe. You have 3 people who are killed every year, 3 in 100,000 in Europe. In Argentina is twice, between 6 and 9. In Brazil and Mexico, the oscillation is between 20 and 30. You know, we are speaking in Brazil of 60,000 people killed by violence, mostly connected with transnational crime, in 1 year. Not now, but they arrived to 60,000 people. So this is a big problem. It affects, everything: corruption, violence, human rights, gender agenda, because one of the crimes is sexual slavery, and of course money laundering, etc. All the basic problems of the region and are connected with transnational crime, and we only have national institutes in order to prosecute criminals. So my proposal is, our proposal, it's a campaign. You can look for that in the net. COPLA campaign, C-O-P-L-A campaign. It's taking the Convention of Palermo against transnational crime, which was signed by all the countries in our region, and to create an international court in order to judge this kind of crimes under the model of the International Criminal Court, but not connected with violation of human rights, the Rome Statute, but to the Convention of Palermo, which is a United Nations convention that is was approved by all the countries in our region. We have worked for 10 years on this. We expect to come back to the government with the Juntos por el Cambio. It was announced at the General Assembly of the United Nations by our President Macri, and there was a resolution of our parliament by unanimity in favor, and all the Minister of Justice and Security of the Mercosur has signed a document in support of that, and the campaign is going on. You are free to join the campaign and to support, and let's see. So I discussed this. We are proposing this. We have a resolution from the Eurolat, from the tables, the presidents of the Eurolat have seen a document in favor, but we are trying to promote a resolution from the Eurolat Assembly. And of course, all you can do in order to support this initiative is very valuable for us. I discussed this with my friend Joseph Borrell, who is in favor, and also the Javi Lopez, who is the president of the Eurolat, Spain, and they are very favorable on the initiative, and we are going to continue this good discussion. Joseph is coming to Argentina in October. We are preparing a conference with him about this and about the other arguments, which are very close. Something which is also very important for us is the agreement between the European Union and the Mercosur. This is crucial. Without this agreement, we are not going to have any kind of Mercosur here. We are going directly to destruction. With the agreement, the situation changes dramatically because we are forced to be serious about the interchange, about putting down the barriers, economic barriers, to have a common tariff for export and import, etc. Without this agreement, there is no Mercosur in the coming future. With the agreement, we have a very, very strong possibility of moving forward through economic integration. I know that many of you are very worried about ecology, and you are right. So there is an initiative. The European Union is creating a document in order to put some standards, ecological standards, in order to avoid that the agreement could cause any kind of ecological damage in the Amazonas, particularly. And I know you are very reluctant about a person like Bolsonaro, and you are right, but this is wrong. First, the situation would be, in any case, worse here without the agreement than with the agreement, even with this agreement. Without this agreement, Latin America is not going towards the European Union or democratic countries of the world, we are directly going under the control of China and Russia. If you think this is going to be better for the ecology, you are completely wrong. And if the best thing that could happen to us, even to control people like Bolsonaro, is to have European Union on board. If you are on board, we have the hope of having some kind of control of national governments tending to destroy everything. But if we don't have the European Union, we are going to have Bolsonaro, news Bolsonaro, and the Chinese, and the Russians, and so on. So think about, and particularly be careful about the national interest, the agrarian interest, France and Poland particularly, which are hiding behind the curtain of ecology. For the ecology of the world and South America, the best thing that could happen to the Mercosur is having the European Union on board, and to have also an agreement in order to fix any possibility of damage. So I'm strongly in favor of the agreement, and I hope that the European Federalists are also in favor, because also for political reasons. Think about the war, think about what's going on with Russia. Europe needs supply chains of democratic countries that are reliable, and they are not warlocks like Russia. So the connection between Europe and Latin America and also North America is crucial for the democracy in the world. And the agreement is a first step towards a more strong integration also in a political way. I remember you that there was an initiative from Canada to join the European Union that was rejected at the last minute at the Canadian Parliament. So think about a future in which this could be the beginning of some kind of global coalition of democracies in favor of a federalist and more pacific and united world. Finally, we are pushing also at the national level towards an agreement between Brazil and Argentina in order to have a common currency. I don't want, it's not that interesting for you, but this is very connected with the agreement with the European Union. Because of course that the investment and interchange would be really easier if we had a single currency in the Mercosur and a single currency in Europe. And we are pushing and trying to move forward the agenda in this direction. Finally, this is only about Europe, but let me now this is me. Okay, let's escape from here. Let's come back to the well. How should I come back to the Okay, my last point is about world federalism. And this is a very important point. If you understand that we are entering a global age, and this is basically an unavoidable consequence of the development of technology, if we are going, and we are going towards a world in which the basic market of wealth is global because we are producing information and key factors and communication and cultural diversity and etc. etc. We have to rethink about the problems in Europe and the strategy inside Europe. Of course, the building of a federal Europe is a crucial element. A failure in the European Union, the end of Euro, and this will be a nightmare for all the world. But I think that the attitude and the way of thinking of many of the European Union, the politics, the concrete policies developed by the European Union at the international level were very weak and were not consistent with the idea of federalism. Federalism is the idea. What is federalism about? Federalism is the idea that every level of the organization of a society, economic, social, cultural, needs a concrete standard, a concrete structure for elaborating common policies. It means at the beginning, federalism was national, was the Federalist Papers and the United States and the need of having some kind of unity among the 13 colonies, etc., etc. Then it became regional through the European Union. It needs to be global because the structure, the economic structure of the world is becoming global. At the beginning, the idea of world federalism was an utopia, and the rational thing was the development of regional, national first, and regional then structure of federalism. But why? Because the organization of society, the level of communication of the society, the economic structure of a society was at the beginning national and then regional, but now it's global. So now the development of federalist and democratic structures at the global level is crucial for Europe. If you think about the real problems of Europe, Europe has, my point is this, the European Union has not a single problem, not a single one. Which are the problems that the European Union has? Okay, they have, so the Union has a problem about economy and unemployment. But this is because regional global crisis like the 2008 started in America and the predominance of global financial structures towards national and regional ones. All these economic problems of Europe are connected with the global scale. Not a single one is eternal. Economic, migrations, climate change, war, all these problems are not European problems, are external problems to Europe. So the basic interest of Europe is to fix this at the global level. If you don't fix this, these problems are going to destroy Europe. And the rise of national populism is directly connected with that. Why? Because there was a balance between the economic and social structure and the political structure. For decades, for centuries maybe, this balance was national. Economic, national economy, national identity, national culture, national politics. Globalization has disrupted this balance. And now we have a culture, communication, an economy, and etc., which are at the global level. The flux of information is at the global level. The flux of communication, of culture is at the global level. And the structure is still national, basically. Regional integration is a step forward, but it's insufficient, And then you have two proposals looking forward to the future. The nationalist proposal is to let's put all at the national level. Let's nationalize the economy. Let's go outside the euro. Let's come back to the national age. This is, of course, impossible. This is utopian, but this is very destructive because they are not able to fix the things, but they are able to disrupt everything, trying to do so. And we are very worried, I suppose, about the success of this speech in Italy now, but in all over Europe. The real problem is if we want to fix democracy and human rights and all the political values in a level which is under the global level, being that regional or national, we are going to fail also. And we are going to, and our failure, the clear sensation of the citizens that there is a failure of fixing our goals to promote development and a green economy, etc., is going to feel national populism, being national populism of left or right. Here in Latin America is mostly leftist. In Europe is mostly rightist, but there is a mix. Basically, they propose the thing. Let's come back to national identity. Let's go back to national economy. Let's fight against the bureaucracy of Brussels or the United Nations bureaucracy or George Soros or whatever. So these ideas are the product of the failure of the democratic and federal forces of the world, meaning basically European Union and the United States to move forward, and Canada and Japan, etc., whatever, to promote their own program, the democracy and federalism at the global level. And the efforts of being made by the European Union were very weak. And I am very worried about many of people who think to themselves as federalists, committing the same mistake that was criticized by Spinelli. You are not going to have a democratic Italy if we don't fix, if we don't have regional integration. And we are not going to have a democratic Europe if we don't make some consistent steps towards global cooperation, global integration, and basically the development of international and global institutions, meaning the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. There is a campaign, and the other initiatives that are on the floor about democratizing and reforming the Security Council and the veto power, etc. We need a stronger, a very strong policy of Europe. And Europe is has not to be, have any kind of shame of proposing itself as a model, because the basic model we need in the world is the European Union model, which is democracy and federalism over the national level. And this is something that you, as a young European federalist, has to have very, very present, because the future of Europe depends on Europe, but depends mostly on what's going on in the world. The current war, the invasion of Ukraine by Putin, is showing this in a very dramatic way, and I hope the last months that were in this matter a very important stimulus in favor of the European Union will be the guidance for the future. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. I think this has been very nice also in the overall series that we have, because we just had a session, an editorial discussion on world federalism, and we precisely spoke about these topics of global integration. And the next session that we're going to have is a personal testimony of two Federalist activists. We're going to have Richard Corbett and Pauline Jessin, who are former presidents of Jeff Europe. So I think this session was a bit of a mix of both. We heard about both of those things, as well as about regional integration. So I think this has been very insightful and very fitting. So thank you very much again. Now, I'll welcome the floor for questions from the audience. So if anybody has any questions or any comments that you would like to share, now's a good moment for that. I see Jorge, go for it.
Yes, I have several questions. Thank you very much, Fernando, in the first place, because I liked it very much. And I have 3 questions, so I will go very briefly over them, and then you can answer all of them or the ones that you find more interesting, because maybe other people want to ask. But first of all, I wanted to know, because you have talked about COPLA, that initiative, I find it very, very important, and I think it's very intelligent to move in that direction. And I wanted to know if there is any country which is opposing COPLA right now, because you've said that many judges were well supporting the initiative, that Argentina, for instance, supports the idea, but I wanted to know if there is any specific country or which are the big obstacles that you see moving forward with the idea. So I know maybe you can answer, or I pose all the questions, whatever you may prefer.
Let's start by this, and then you make the second question. Okay. Oh, well, you know, I wish there were countries against. We are in a very so what is the state of affairs? The campaign is basically national. Is moving Democracia Global, you know, because you were at the World Federalist Movement Executive Committee, so you know Democracia Global is the NGO which is part of the movement of the WFM, which is moving forward. But we had very limited resources. We were not successful to have financiation in order to create a regional structure. So we should fix only at the national level, and we focused in the idea of having at least one government with us in favor of the campaign. And we reached this goal because I'm part of the Juntos por el Cambio. We were the national government between 2015 and 2019, and then we lost the elections. But we are very confident to come back to the field, to the government in next year. And the support of the Minister of Justice and the President was crucial in this idea. But we arrived to launch the general idea we had a coalition of NGOs which are supporting the idea. We had many really important members of the Latin American and also the European. So I don't know, Fernando Sabater is part of the campaign, just to mention somebody from Spain, and many other important intellectuals all over the world. But at the national level, at the governative level, we are just starting the thing. And we hope to come back to the campaign and to promote this at the national government level if we are going back to the government next year.
Thank you very much. I know usually if other people want to ask, maybe I can wait so that they can pose their questions and then go.
Yeah, let's see. Does somebody else want to ask something, or do we give the floor to Jorge for another one?
I can keep shooting if not.
Okay, but yeah, it looks like you can just go for it. Let's take another one.
Okay, so you have talked about Europe and about the fact that the actions that Europe has taken in order to achieve world federation have been weak thus far. So which concretely, because you have mentioned some very fast, but how should Europe defend these world federal theses, and which should them be? Because I don't know if you are talking about the like the initiative of the citizens for like laws or resolutions at the UN Assembly, or like which are the concrete decisions or actions that the European Union should take that you are demanding because you don't see them coming?
Well,
What should
so
the
many
European
things
Union do?
to do. I'm going just to mention concrete things where we were trying to move without any success. First, the European Union should support regional integration initiatives all over the world. It's not happening, you know. So when we ask for, we Democracia Global are maybe the only, and the Altiero Spinelli Cathedral, which is going into a foundation, we ask for funds in order to promote regional integration to the embassy of the European Union. And the answer is we don't have money for that. We have money for gender equality, for indigenous people, and so on. Human rights, very good. I'm in favor. But who is going to support the initiative in favor of regional integration if not the European Union? A basic thing. I proposed at the European Parliament, we have the Jean Monnet cathedrals all over the world. This is the commission. It's very good. I'm supportive. I could be also a professor of the Jean Monnet. No problem about that. What about Altiero Spinelli Cathedral? So the European Parliament is not capable of creating, also in the rest of Europe. First, you, Jeffers, in Europe, you should say, okay, let's create Altiero Spinelli Cathedral all over Europe, and then maybe it's another part of the world. So these are very, you know, this is almost nothing. Okay, the big things. There is a campaign for, in order to create a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly, thinking that the General Assembly is the Senate of the world. Let's create some kind of United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. It could be made only, you need only the majority of the members of the General Assembly to vote, and you can create a consultative assembly, and you could put together the parliamentarians, national parliamentarians all over the world in order to discuss, let's say, climate change. And then you have the new international meeting about climate change, but you have also a recommendation from the Parliament of the world, the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly, saying we should do this and that and that. We need the representation of the common interests of humanity. And the only way of arriving to that is a parliament. There is, when I was a child, I read Cosmos, you know, Carl Sagan. And at the end, Carl Sagan says something. We know what nations are saying, but who is speaking on behalf of Earth? Who is speaking on behalf of human race? This is the 60s, you know. So, I mean, we are still there. Who is going to speak about the common, well, every time we discuss climate change, then arrives the representative of Brazil and say, okay, let's do everything. But so Amazonia, the Amazonia is from Brazil sovereignty. And then an American one and say, okay, let's do all the things, it's okay, but the cars have to have a big engine of 5 liters. And so the national interest in an international table, the national interest is first, and the common interest is second. So we need a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly, at least because we need the common interest to be first and the national interest to be the second ones. United Nations Parliamentary, the reform of United Nations Security Council. We need to regulate veto, and we have to limit veto when issues like international security, war, like Putin invasion is on the table. No veto for that, and there is no enough decision of the European Union in order to push for this change, and there is no agreement about an European chair. So Germany is looking for a chair inside the Security Council, but it's not moving forward. It's not pushing for a European Union wall. That could be. So we have England and France Well, we need to have a common representation of the European Union there. And in future, we should think about a United Nations Security Council in which the regions of the world are represented, not the nation. So this is something that to be put on the table at least. So I am not saying that tomorrow we are going to have that, but we need to start right now because we are late. So of course we are, it's not something that you are going to fix like a goal for the next month. But if we don't start in favor of this, when it's very clear the influence of these topics in the international agenda and war and climate change and etc. is very worrying. This weakness of the European Union.
Okay, so Jorge said he had 3 questions. We still have one in reserve over there, but I'm gonna give the floor to someone else if somebody has anything to share, any questions or any comments. Otherwise, I can switch by asking something in between, and then we can give it back to Jorge. So. Especially at the start, you were saying many things about what kinds of factors have hindered integration within Latin America, like that one country is much bigger than the others, lack of war, like in Europe, and so on. So, which I think is quite instructive because those can be formulated into more general conditions for where regional integration is successful. So this kind of made me think, what kind of advice would you give to other regions of the world where there might be activists, for example, that campaign for regional integration?
Well, I don't feel in the capacity of giving advices to other regions. You know, the regional integration is a very complex process, and every region has many particulars. That's why I started by the local ones in South America. I don't know which are the local regional problems of Africa or Asia, etc. But I think in this way there are some principles. So it's amazing for me that there is a big consensus in the world about the virtues of federalism and democracy. And my concern is about how difficult it is to apply these, which are values we accept for the national level, at the regional and at the global level. Europe had a leadership, has still a leadership on this. Why? Because in the best scenario, if Europe is able to keep the unity and it's able to develop the economy, and even in this situation, Europe in future is going to be a declinant power. So, you know, the future in terms of, in quantity terms, is moving to Asia and to the big countries of Asia. So if Europe wants to keep some role, it has to think about which are the values, which are the strong points in which Europe could find unity and some kind of political identity. And I think that the basic thing is regional integration, meaning the capacity of putting federalism and democracy over the national level. Think about the future, because probably at the end of the Second World War, the United States were half of the global economy, almost 40%, more than 40%. And Europe was, for many decades, was very close to this level. But now we are having an economic explosion in Asia, and this is going to change everything. The real concern is where is the the world moving forward. The China model is not democratic, and there are many other countries. India is getting a very important concrete power, and if I were European, I would be concerned about how to help India in order not to become a national power, not going to enter the politics of power and a possible conflict in future with China, but to become some kind of regional agent of democracy and federalism at the regional level. These are just some ideas, but I think the scenario is going to become more complex, and the war of Putin is a clear sign of a change. Think about, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was a period in which everything should be possible, you know, the end of history, Fukuyama, and democracy, and blah, 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 blah. But, and we had some steps. We moved forward, the European Union moved forward during those years, and the International Criminal Court was created with a big contribution of the World Freedom Movement, and so on. But September 11 was a change, clearly. The economic crisis of 2008 was another step back, and now we have war at the doors of Europe. So the situation is very worrying, and I think that the participation of the European Union at the global level is crucial in order to keep peace, multilateralism, international institutions. Think about also the problems of the pandemic and the many questions that the pandemic raises at the global level, and the complete lack of coordination and help at the global level in front of a global phenomenon like the pandemic. So all these things are very worrying, and the only thing I say, we need a stronger and more clear role of the European Union in all these matters.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we'll see. Should we give the floor back to Jorge? I think we are getting towards the end of our time as well. So unless there's other questions, you can also put on the chat if you like. I see Jordan has a hand up, or is this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's go for Jordan and then Jorge.
Yeah, you mentioned climate change, like for instance, battling with climate change. I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion, for instance, like with the Amazon forest? Like there are some thoughts about being like world cultural heritage. What is your opinion about that?
Well, you know, the Amazon forest is a big a leading case, I would say, but because in one hand, developed countries and international community say, well, we need to keep the Amazon, and this is true, this is undisputable. On the other way, Brazilians say, okay, but you destroyed your forest, and why should we keep? So you need some kind of balance between development and ecology. And of course, you have to keep the forest as at the present stage without any destruction. But we need to establish some kind of mechanism at the global level in order to compensate. I know there are some, you know, the ecologic bonds, etc. But all these mechanisms are very primitive still, and are clearly under the needs. And this is something which is directly connected with the situation, because I think that starting to worry me is about the resources. You know, Europe was had a very important. In order to finish the Amazon question, I think we should have an agreement between European Union and Mercosur, an ecological agreement about how to keep the Amazonas and how this could be an advantage for all the world, but it's also an opportunity of development for the region, for the European Union, but also for Brazil. Maybe a help in developing elements of the green economy. Maybe the European Union could support initiatives towards a green economy and research, etc., in Brazil in order to help this development. So Brazil could renounce to the devastation of the forest in exchange for support for developing economy of society and information, research on green economy, etc., etc. This should be, not that difficult, not that costly, and maybe should be part of the agreement. But the basic thing, we need the relationship. We need to approve the agreement because we needed 20 years in order to fix the agreement. So if we reopen the agreement, we are going to nowhere. So we need to keep the agreement as it is and to add ecologic clausule or addenda in order to fix the ecological problem. And think about the consequence of war, because also Europe had the 30 golden years, also because it had the big benefit of being protected by the US umbrella, and the budget in weapons and armies was very low for years and years. But now this is changing, and Germany is going to put more and more money in on the development of the army. And this is a very big problem because the money, you take the money from where? From the citizens, and also from the health budget and the educational budget, etc. So think about, because the building of a peaceful international community is directly connected with the level of education and health inside the European Union and all the countries. And this is the basic phenomena of globalization. Globalization is very old. We can find a lot of global successes or historical episode of globalization from Marco Polo, Cristoforo Colombo, etc., etc. But the characteristic of the present age is that for years, the international scenario was basically the summatory of what was going on inside the national scenario. So all the processes were basically national, and the international scenario was something secondary, the result of national processes, etc. Now it's exactly the opposite. You have the war in Ukraine, and now the economic situation in Argentina is completely changed because we sell commodities and soya and so on, and the prices were to the double, and this was good. When the war finishes, it will be good news for the peace, but bad news for the Argentine economy. And so the basic thing of globalization is that global processes tend to fix regional and national processes. And if we had war and conflict and nationalism at the global level, we are not going to be able to keep democracy at the national or the regional level.
Okay, thank you. Now I think we are finally going to get back to Jorge for the final question. So yes, and then I think we can start concluding after that as well. So let's conclude with something interesting.
Okay, thank you very much, Yuso. Okay, the last question, Fernando, was related to civil society in Latin America, because one of the differences that I have also seen between the integration process in Latin America and Europe is that in Europe, there has been a strong role which has been carried by associations like Young European Federalists, like the Union of European Federalists, like the European Movement. And I don't know which kind of organized civil society exists in Latin America, because you have talked about Democracia Global. I don't know if it is just the only association that it exists. I remember with the Young World Federalists, we were talking about how could we promote regional organizations similar to YES in Africa with the Young African Federalists, or supporting Pan-African organizations like ICOYACA, who is supporting the free trade area. And I was thinking, like, if at the Latin American scale, does anything exist? Do we have to create it from scratch? Because it might be very useful, right, to promote political integration. And if the only actor is Democracia Global, maybe we can like impose it somehow. We can help from Europe. I know there are many people in Spain willing to help. So I don't know which is the situation of the civil society in Latin America, and how do you see that we could improve it?
Well, thank you very much. This is our concern, you know. Democracia Global is almost the only one, not just in Latin America, in the global south. We don't have federalist organizations, and this is, you know, Camila Lopez Badra, who is the director of Democracia Global, is also the director of the outreach committee of the World Federalist Movement, and she is the person you have to speak about. Let me say this. It's very difficult to find, it would be difficult to find people who are have a vision so complete as the Jeffers, you know. But you should find people who agrees on specific topics. For instance, COPLA. We have developed the COPLA campaign, and we have contacts with young people, academicians, politicians, etc., all over Latin America. And these contacts are very crucial, because maybe here in Latin America, you are not going to have many people who understand all the problem, and they think, okay, I'm going to be a Latin American Federalist. But you are going to find, you should start by finding people who support, you know, a single currency at the Mercosur level, who support the Mercosur, or support the agreement, or support the COPLA campaign, and so on. And going this way, maybe you are going to find a way. Of course, I'm very favorable. Maybe we should find groups in Chile or Uruguay or whatever. And of course, I'm going to help anything you do in this way. We had contacts with many, you know. I used to go to Brazil and Chile and Uruguay to promote COPLA for my own political tasks. But we should think carefully about the characteristics of a campaign like this. And I think we should have a meeting about your initiative with Camila, and fix some ideas what she thinks about, because her opinion is very important, because she is more on the field than me. So maybe she has some suggestions to keep in mind.
Thank you very much, Fernando.
Thanks a lot. I think this is a very practical thing as well. Of course, the Federalist Academy, it is about learning about federalism, but it's also for inspiring people for federalism and going towards in practice. And this is indeed something that we'll also get to during the autumn semester. So So yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier as well, I think this has been a very nicely wrapped around session into the overall context of our series, and we're very thankful for you, Fernando, for coming to speak to us today. So thank you once again for this session, and thank you to all of the participants who joined us today. Our next session is going to be on the 10th of October, which is going to be a Monday evening. And as was mentioned earlier, this is going to be a session on being a Federalist, a personal testimony. So the idea there is to get people to share their personal reflections on their Federalist thinking, how it has evolved over their time as an activist, in what kind of practical situations did they have to exercise their Federalist thinking. And the idea is that you will come with many questions to the session, and we can have a very interactive discussion session. So we're looking forward to seeing you next time, which is the 10th of October. And in the meantime, if you haven't done it yet, you have 4 hours to sign up for the in-person seminar in Prague. But now for the moment, I'm going to say a good rest of the evening for all of you, and thank you once again for joining.
Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you all. It was a pleasure. Always in contact. If we let's continue this exchange. It's very important for us. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Gracias. Abrazo.